Welcome to the Moon Magic Tarot channel and this How to Manifest with the Moon video. In today's video, we are looking at the 10th moon phase of 2022. I think the very best way to learn about moon manifestation is to understand the different layers of information and energy that come with the moon so that we can harness this energy to enhance our manifestations. So that's what we're going to look at in this video today. We'll begin by looking at the charts for this moon cycle. We'll look at the phases of the moon, the signs that she's travelling through, and the planetary connections that she's making that will add to the incoming lunar energy. And with our awareness of this, we'll be able to manifest far more effectively. Then we're going to take a little look at what I call the soul growth layer. We're going to draw from the knowledge and wisdom of tribal and Celtic traditions and have a look at the kind of deeper psychological level of learning that we can process and that arrives during each of the 13 moons of the year. Each of the 13 moon cycles starts at a new moon, which is also associated with the setting of wishes and intentions. Let's have a little look at what's actually happening right here and right now and for the coming month. This particular moon phase, the 10th moon of 2022, begins with a new moon in Libra, and this will happen on either the 25th or the 26th of September. These are the actual timings across the globe, so you can find out the timing for you wherever you are. And the reason that we want to know the exact timing wherever we happen to be on our planet is because the new moon energy is most potent from the exact time of the new moon and for the 8 hours afterwards. So we want to use this pocket, this window of time, to set our wishes and our intentions. So Super Souls, let's look at the dynamics of this amazing new moon, particularly in terms of manifestation. So we know at a new moon, we're always thinking about setting new moon wishes and new moon intentions. And ideally, we want to align those with the energy of the overall dynamics. Now, this is a new moon in Libra. Here we are. We're going to click on the new moon here. Now, as you can see, the moon and the sun are together. This is always the case at a new moon. And from our perspective, they are always sitting together. Now, they are sitting opposite dynamic, expansive Jupiter. Even though an opposition is sometimes a little bit discordant, the connection with this is actually amazing. It's expansive, it's creative, it's passionate. Jupiter is in Aries, and the energy of this dynamic is really, it has a forward motion and an expansion, a desire to make something bigger. Now, this is amazing because if we are setting wishes and intentions, we're kind of doing so at a point when the energy is primed to move something forwards, to expand, and actually to make it real. Now, if we then look at some of the other dynamics that are going on as well. Now, Pluto is the planet of rebirth. Pluto is actually trining. This is a lovely flowing connection. Pluto wants us to rebirth, to transform, and Pluto is sitting in a beautiful connection with Venus and with Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication, the winged messenger of the gods, currently in retrograde. Okay, but when Mercury is in retrograde, it tends to mean that even if things take a little longer, we're being given an opportunity to review so that we can kind of cross the T's and dot the I's. That's the energy in terms of manifestation. Venus is wanting balance, harmony, love. So we have this dynamic going on. And actually the sun and the moon are sitting very, very close to Mercury. And they are in Libra. Venus is the ruler of Libra. So we've got lots and lots of harmonious, expansive, regenerative energy around this particular new moon. We also, as one other dynamic I want to pick up on here, Saturn is connected to Uranus. This is a square. This is something that is globally, we're really seeing the impact of this, whether it's personally or globally. We're seeing things shaken up. Uranus is the great awakener. He brings sudden happenings and sudden changes. Saturn brings us the karmic lessons. So we're sort of seeing a lot of stuff that says, whoa, we really need to address this. This can't be allowed to repeat. We're just having stuff brought to the surface. It's very much a kind of what I would call a breakthrough versus breakdown kind of energy. So we're possibly seeing a bit of both. And Mars who is very much about getting going, forward motion again. Mars is actually trining Saturn. So the energy here, and Mars is also in Gemini, which gives us an opportunity to really evaluate and see things from all perspectives. So what we have here is an overall dynamic for this new moon that is absolutely primed to create change, to show us things that need to be changed, and for us to be able to initiate and move those changes forwards, and have the energy of the universe backing those changes. And with a new moon in Libra, the Libran energy often speaks about, it's really about harmony, love, relationships. I mean, anything in your world that feels out of balance. If you set wishes and intentions on this new moon that focus on your desire to bring about balance and harmony in your life, the energy is going to be completely with you. If you want to call in a soulmate of kind of equal standing, if you're looking for a relationship of equality, again, balance, relationships, love, this is the perfect new moon to set those wishes and intentions. So super souls, engage with this energy, go for it, have fun, and make the most of it. So super souls, the moon then moves into her waxing crescent phase, where she is basically getting bigger. We've set our intentions and our wishes at the new moon phase, and this is the phase when we kind of begin to think about how we are going to implement the things that we need to do to take our manifestations forwards, whether this is something that you are manifesting that is ongoing or whether it's something brand new. So she's starting to get bigger. This phase lasts between the 26th of September and October the 1st, and she's going to move through Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. Now, I'd like to just take a little look at one of the dynamics that are happening right at the peak, the sort of the midway peak of this waxing crescent phase, because if you think of the waxing crescent phase in manifestation as kind of like if you're driving a car and going on a journey, you're coming out of the parking lot and you've set your GPS, you know where you're going, you know what destination you want to get to. Sometimes the coming out of the parking lot and getting going on your journey can run like clockwork really smoothly, but sometimes there can be some fits and starts, maybe some roadworks along the way or a lot of traffic. And when we look at the overall dynamics and the signs that the moon is passing through, it helps us to navigate this point of acceleration and how we invest our energy, whether it's thinking time or doing time or both in our manifestations. Our awareness of the way that the moon is moving and the connections she's making and the signs that she's moving through, this is going to help us to plan effectively and become master manifestors. So I wanted to pick up on this point in the middle of the waxing crescent phase, because the moon actually on the 29th connects with the nodes. Now, the nodes are connected to our karmic pathway. The North Node is about our past experiences, where we've come from and what we've learned. And the South Node is where we're going and how we're going to integrate that learning into our aspirations for the future, our calling, our purpose, what we wish to manifest in terms of not only stuff, but who we wish to be as well in the world. So when the moon passes the nodes, it sometimes can create kind of windows of opportunity. Later on the very same day, the moon actually then aligns, she connects in a similar way to Uranus. Uranus is the great awakener. She also connects with Saturn. Now, although the connection is a little bit discordant, Saturn is a karmic influence as well. Saturn is asking us to restructure our lives, to look at the things that aren't working and to change them, to look at systems that aren't working, to look at, whether that's a political system or a way of thinking or a structure within an organization or even an internal structure within our own mind. Things that aren't working, maybe aspects of the past that are no longer relevant are being called into question. Uranus and Saturn are already creating a very strong dynamic together. It's a very powerful square here. And so with the moon tuning into this, I think on the 29th, we may see some significant windows of opportunity. Now, they may not come in the form that we expect. And I would say around the energy of the 29th, if you were just thinking you were getting going in your manifestations and suddenly you feel like something kind of shakes up your world, well, trust that it's coming with purpose. It may be coming to clear away the old, to make way for the new. It may be creating a window of opportunity for you to try something out or to shift a thinking pattern or some form of limiting belief. Either way, because the moon is in Scorpio at this point in time, I think we can expect it to have the potential for some quite deep thinking. And yeah, I would also say there's that lovely saying, isn't it? When in deep water, become a diver. So worth really considering this. Now, the moon will then move into Sagittarius during this moon phase. So having done a bit of deep diving and maybe discovered some things we need to let go of and some new windows of opportunity, we then have an opportunity to move things forwards when the moon moves into ongoing fiery Sagittarius, where we find renewed hope and renewed optimism. When the moon reaches her first quarter position, she's going to be in lovely, grounded, earthy, practical Capricorn. Also, I would say ambitious Capricorn. Now, if we are getting going in our manifestations, the first quarter position of the moon is a time of evaluation. It's a time of review where we get to look at where we are, how things are progressing, and what we need to do next as the moon continues to expand and give us an increase in energy as she moves to her fullest. Now, today, the moon is connected with the sun. This is always the dynamic that we get at a quarter moon. So the sun is in balanced Libra, and they're not really massively connected to any other planets. However, there are some really interesting dynamics going on in the background. So for starters, Mercury, who has been in a retrograde position for quite a little while now. When Mercury is in retrograde, we often get a lot of upheaval. Things go wrong. They don't run smoothly. The purpose of a Mercury retrograde is actually to slow us down. It's to get us to look and live life kind of differently, actually to align ourselves with things that really matter, not to always be go, 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 go in the goal-orientated way that our culture often demands of us. Now, Mercury is now stationing direct in lovely, practical, pragmatic Virgo with a beautiful trine to Pluto, who is wanting transformation and rebirth, but also in an opposition to Neptune. And this is interesting because with every dynamic, there is always what we might call a higher vibrational way of experiencing the energy and a lower vibrational way. Now, the lower vibration of Mercury opposite Neptune is that we can actually feel a bit disillusioned. We can feel a bit defeated or a bit tired or feel as though things aren't really working out as we want. The higher vibration is that actually we can find spiritual solutions. We can rise above a situation and really access spiritual guidance. So this whole kind of stuff that's going on in the background today is an interesting dynamic because Pluto wants us to move forwards, wants us to rebirth. And I'm just going to click on this because I'd like to tune in with some of the other dynamics as well. If we then look at the big dynamic that's going on between Uranus and Saturn, they are in a square. This is the collaboration that is really wanting us to create change. This is, again, the lower energetic of this connection is where we see things break down, but actually the higher energetic is that we can break through. So this for me is a very dynamic first quarter moon, actually, very, very dynamic indeed. We also have Mars down here tuning into Saturn in a very favorable way. And Mars energy is very go, go, go. So super souls, I actually think the best way to handle this day of review is to really ground yourself, meditate into that space of potential and possibility. If anything isn't working out, stop, listen, and take time to really connect with what you can actually do in a practical, pragmatic way to find creative solutions, because the Mercury opposite Neptune can really bring us creative spiritual solutions. Higher minded solutions are coming in from Uranus. So in a way, this could be quite an intense first quarter moon. On the other hand, I think there could be huge potential for us to actually find and see the right solutions to move anything forwards. And if anything is really already moving forwards at a pace and everything is really seriously happening for you, you may actually find that you just very clearly see the next steps to continue on your pathway of manifestation. Now, following quite a dynamic first quarter moon, in the waxing gibbous phase, and this is a very important phase in manifestation because the lunar energy is basically building. The waxing gibbous phase is the point when we move from the first quarter up to the full moon. So for anyone that knows and experiences that higher level of emotionality in the build up to the full moon, there's a lot of additional energy available for us to channel if we are able to do so in a positive and useful kind of way. Now, the waxing gibbous phase will be taking place between October the 4th through to October the 8th, and the moon will move through Capricorn, through Aquarius, and then into Pisces. Now, the key areas here are that she will first of all pass Pluto, the dynamic energy of Pluto, who is calling for transformation and calling us sometimes to deep dive and really look at stuff that we may have swept under the carpet. So on the one hand, we've got the higher energetic of transformation and rebirth. On the other hand, we may be digging deep in order to create that rebirth. And the moon then, which I think is very powerful in Aquarius, will actually sit with Saturn. Saturn, as we know, is in this very powerful Uranus square, breakthrough or breakdown, the higher and the lower energetic. What we also see, and this is ongoing, is that Lilith is tuning into this dynamic. And the energy of Lilith, the story of Lilith is that, the story of Lilith is that she was made by God alongside Adam. They were put on this earth as equals, and because she wasn't terribly compliant, she was banished from the Garden of Eden, and God then made Eve out of Adam. So off went Lilith, feeling pretty miffed and fed up because she felt that her birthright of equality had been removed from her. And, just because she wasn't compliant. So what we tend to see with the energy of Lilith coming in are things that don't always feel fair, things that like injustice. And the overall dynamic that's really shaking us up, both personally and globally, is really about putting wrongs right, doing things differently. So we need to think about how this may apply to our individual manifestations. At this present time, I would say that if you are manifesting anything that holds higher values, the truth, integrity, the universe is going to be backing you 100%. And during this waxing gibbous phase where the moon is building, passing through Aquarius and through Capricorn, Aquarius, and then into Pisces, the universe will have your back. If you are involved in anything underhanded or trying to sweep stuff under the carpet or pretend that something hasn't happened, then the energy probably won't be working with you. This is really about stepping into that pathway of the spiritual warrior and knowing that the universe will support your actions. At the last part of this waxing gibbous phase, just before we hit the full moon, actually the moon will join Neptune, and she will be joining this dynamic, the dynamic that we have where Neptune is opposite Mercury. We've spoken about that in the previous phase, and this can be This can really bring very creative spiritual solutions. But the Mars energy, the fiery energy of Mars, is also squaring Neptune. Neptune is very watery, very spiritual, very emotional, and Mars is very fiery and very passionate. So this whole collaboration of energy, and the moon will join this just before she reaches her fullest point in that build-up where the energy is often highly emotional. I think we could see a little bit of the sort of polarities of views sparking off, emotions spilling over. The key here is always to look for the higher solution. And if you're aware of this dynamic and you see people spilling over around you, rather than letting them press your buttons, if you're aware of this dynamic, you yourself can hold that higher perspective. You yourself can recognize, well, if my buttons are pressed, they're my buttons. I'm going to choose how I respond to this. And in fact, I may actually just put the brakes on, not get involved in this, step away, and I will deal with it in a few days' time when the energy calms down. So Super Souls, let's look at the full moon. Now, anyone who follows the moon will know that the full moon is associated with higher levels of emotions. And in our manifestations, this is really quite important to understand in terms of harnessing this energy to the very best of our ability. If you think of the full moon as an opportunity to see what you need to see so that you can remain on track and continue on your pathway forwards, whatever you're manifesting, or indeed to see what you need to see if you need to course correct or make adjustments. Now, this moon is actually, the moon is in Aries. Aries is an energy that sponsors new beginnings, new opportunities, and the moon happens to be sitting next to Chiron. So there's a lovely healing quality. And, the energy around this moon is really sponsoring and supporting healing and reparation. Now, we have this big background stuff going on with the Uranus-Saturn square tuning in with Lilith, which we have spoken about a moment ago. So the overall dynamics of this full moon could mean that things are feeling as though they're being shaken up quite a lot. We're seeing things that need to change. We are being asked to take the higher pathway, to find higher minded solutions, out of the box solutions, to hold integrity. And these are the kind of energetics that are around us. Now, I think if you consider in your own personal circumstances, using the full moon as a day of grounding and reflection, no matter how much emotionality is being spilled around you, if you are able to get grounded and become an observer of your own experiences and the stuff that's going on around you, you should actually find that you can see very clearly what is working for you as well as what isn't, and the next steps forwards to either continue with the stuff that's already on track, or indeed to course correct and make adjustments with anything that isn't. We're now going to look at the disseminating phase, or the waning gibbous phase, which runs from the full moon. So the moon is now starting to get smaller down to her last quarter. In this instance, this is going to run between October the 10th and October the 16th, and the moon will pass through Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. Now, there are some key points during this phase that I think are helpful for us to be aware of in our manifestations. So firstly, I would say recognize that when the moon is in her disseminating phase, we've had the illuminations and the realizations that the full moon energy has given us. We are now in a phase when the energy is still quite high. It hasn't sort of reduced yet massively. There's still quite a lot of energy, but it's as if, let's say you're driving along a motorway. It's as though you've got up to speed, and at some point you're going to start slowing down, ready to come off the motorway, but you're running at a fairly high speed. I find this phase to be best used in terms of consistent, steady progress. Okay, in terms of my manifestations, I'm now implementing the things that have been illuminated for me at the full moon, but I want to keep going. I want to use the energy while it is there. Now, there are some key points. during this particular phase. The first one is actually on the 10th, when the moon will tune in with Uranus and Saturn. She will also have passed the nodes again. So I think we can see the lunar energy adding to this overall dynamic of breakthrough, breakdown. Hopefully at this point, especially following the illuminations and the opportunities for new beginnings at the full moon in Aries, this should be a point where we begin to see windows of opportunity that give us those breakthrough moments, those points of illumination where we can get that out of the box thinking, that higher minded solution, and we can start to implement it and make it real. Now, as the moon moves forwards, on the 13th, she actually tunes in incredibly favorably with expansive Jupiter, who is also in Aries, only 1 degree in Aries, but nevertheless, Jupiter is actually in retrograde. So Jupiter is, although she it is expanding, as always, there's a lot of reflection around the retrograde energy. So there's real opportunity here, and tuning in with Mercury in Libra, there's real opportunity to, I mean, this is just going to add weight to the higher minded solutions, the seeing clearly, anything you're doing that has a root of integrity in it is really going to have the backing of the universe. I mean, I think we kind of know from a spiritual perspective that this is true anyway, but the planetary alignments during this phase, while there's still a lot of energy and continuity, things I think are going to move forwards. They're going to be helpful. You might find during this phase you have those amazingly chance conversations that one thing leads to another and doorways just open. Things fall into place. Now, just before we come to the end of this moon phase, the moon will actually pass Mars. Now, Mars is tuning in a rather challenging way, potentially, with Neptune. Mars is all fire, Neptune is all water. So, you know, what happens when we put water and fire together? We get steam. But remember that steam is powerful enough to drive a locomotive. So spiritual solutions, higher-minded solutions. Mars is wanting to push us forwards. Neptune is wanting to bring spiritual guidance. What you can get with this sort of combination of go, go, go energy versus spiritual, emotional energy is sometimes a feeling that things aren't moving forwards as quickly as you would like. So if you find during this disseminating moon phase, the waning gibbous phase, particularly as we head for the last quarter, that there are areas of your world that aren't quite moving forwards as fast as you would like, just hold fire, because when we get to the last quarter, the quarter moons are always a time of review. You may well find that you are shown exactly what you need to see to realign, rebalance, and move forwards at a more steady pace. So super souls, let's have a look at the last quarter moon. This is the time in the moon phase when we can begin to slow things down and reflect, and we can maintain some steady progress. I always think at this point in the moon phase, slow and steady wins the race, but things feel as though they are calming down. The heightened energy of the beginning of this moon phase, the background stuff that's been going on, is beginning to sort of turn down. It's almost like if you have a pot on the stove and it was boiling frantically, you can turn down the heat a little bit. So I think that's what we're going to see here. We have our lovely, lovely moon also very favorably tuning in with Neptune. So again, the emotionality is flowing, but in a positive way. And although the moon is opposite Pluto, Pluto wants transformation and rebirth. Even though it's an opposition, which can be a little bit discordant, I really do feel this is a moon phase, a day when we can actually begin to kind of find our way through any of the challenges or the hiccups that have been taking place on our journey this month in terms of manifestation. So this is the point when, again, if you have the opportunity to really slow it down and be an observer of your own experience, this is a day to kind of, I think, to write lists, to really think about where you need to apply nurture. Do you need to take a day out and just step away from things so that you can come back refreshed? The energy here is really progressive in a very gentle, nurturing way. When the moon then reaches her final phase of this particular moon cycle, the waning crescent phase or balsamic phase, she is going to be moving from Leo into Virgo and then into Libra. And this phase runs between October the 18th to October the 24th. Now, there are some key pivotal moments during this phase. So the moon is now diminishing. She's past her last quarter, which is always a point of review and evaluation. And I always feel in our manifestations, this is the point when we begin to really slow things down, continue with steady progress in our external output, but we begin to look internally at what we can do in terms of internal changes so that effectively change begins from within. We shift the viewpoint from our external world to our internal world. Now, the first thing that takes place during this moon phase that I think is significant is that the moon tunes into the Uranus Saturn connection. Now, this is now diminishing, but nevertheless, there's still an intensity here that is worth being aware of. This takes place on the 19th. Now, as we then move on, the moon will then tune in very, very favorably with the nodes. Now, this is our karmic pathway, where we've come from, where we want to go. So if we think about that flow, it's kind of like, I feel what it's really potentially offering us energetically and in our manifestations is a message that says, attend to the details. We've moved from Leo into Virgo, and the energy of a Virgo moon really does allow us to kind of cross the T's, dot the I's. So I think this is a phase in our manifestations when we want to be methodical and really think through what we're doing and how what we are doing fits into our overall longer term planning in terms of manifestations, whether this is beginning to think about new areas of manifestation that we will plant in our new moon wishes as we approach another new moon and the new moon phase, or whether we are looking at different stages in our manifestations. Let's move on. We then see the moon very favorably connecting here with Pluto, transformation, rebirth, that transformational energy, and the dynamic of Mars pushing things forwards. Mars is kind of giving a little bit of a turbocharge here and saying, come on, let's get things going. So even though this is a slow and steady phase to the moon, I feel overall the opportunities that are offered to us from a manifestation perspective are to do with consistency, perseverance, steady progress, paying attention to the detail, being methodical, just allow it. This is a phase when we can do things and yet simultaneously go with the flow. It's like really being an active participant in co-creating with the universe. Super Souls, since I started creating this video, I am now losing my voice, so I must apologise if I get a little bit croaky for the last part of this video. Let's have a little look now at the soul growth layer, the Celtic traditions and the tribal wisdom for the 10th moon cycle of this year. So how does this soul growth layer work? Well, when I started to really discover, to inquire, to learn about the tribal wisdoms, particularly the Native American wisdom, which I've read a lot of the work of an amazing person, Jamie Sams. I can highly recommend her. And also the Celtic traditions. Every moon month is associated with a tree, a particular tree or a particular plant. What I kind of found from a psychological perspective was that the stuff that was showing up in my world and affecting my ability to manifest. You know, we're manifesting in lots of different ways, and manifestation is always about ultimately the inner work that we do, because, you know, change starts from within. If our own inner workings are not in alignment and aren't working well, if we're knocked off balance easily, then, you know, manifestation gets knocked off balance as well. And what I found was that the stuff that was showing up in my life, the life lessons, really resonated with the teachings that were being offered for each of the moon months throughout the year. So let's have a look at the 10th moon cycle of the year. The Celtic and pagan traditions associate the 10th moon cycle with vine. And Native American traditions celebrate the 10th moon cycle with the clan moon mother of weaves the web. And what is really fascinating is that even though these two cultures are coming from opposite sides of the globe, opposite sides of the pond, the learning and the lessons that come from these two perspectives are really, really similar. You'll also probably find that during each moon cycle, the full moon often comes under several other names as well. So during the 10th moon phase, the ones I've come across are the full moon being known as Hunter's Moon and Moon of Falling Leaves. So let's learn about the themes that run through the tree law of vine and the clan moon mother of weaves the web. Vine is a climbing plant. It represents strength, determination, endurance, the ability to grow and to regrow, to get a foothold in rocky ground. It has tendrils that can cling. It climbs onwards and upwards. It can branch out in new directions. It represents fertility. So the energy of vine is really embodying all of the components of creativity. Like any climbing plant, vine can live in a perfectly balanced, interconnected relationship with whatever it is climbing up and reliant upon. On the other hand, if it gets too prolific, it can actually swamp or drown the very thing that it needs to create its own sustainability. And so in the month of Vine, we might expect things to come up in our personal development and soul growth that are connected to sustainability, that is about co-creativity, the way in which we rely on others, a mutuality of both giving and receiving. And Weaves the Web teaches us very similar lessons. We can weave webs of things and situations and circumstances that tie us in knots. Or alternatively, we can be actively involved in co-creating things that are born of love and respect and regard, that carry a mutuality of giving and receiving. Now, we are all manifesting all of the time. You know, science has shown us that thoughts create things. So this is a moon month when we may begin to see where we are actually investing our creativity. Does our imagination run wild into the areas of things that we don't want rather than the things that we do want? Are we giving more than we are receiving? Or indeed, are we taking more than we are giving? All of these are the kinds of themes that might run through our lives and our life circumstances during this moon month. And fascinatingly, this ties in with traditional astrology as well, because we begin this moon month with a new moon in Libra calling for love, harmony, balance in everything. And we then have a full moon in Aries calling for new beginnings, where we may well be shown anything that is no longer serving us that we need to let go of, whether that is internal or external. Now, I could talk all day about this kind of stuff. It has absolutely blown me away to really discover how all of these different traditional disciplines actually align in their teachings and their lessons as we move through every single moon phase of the year. Super Souls, there is so much we could talk about, but I hope that I've given you just a teensy flavour of the kinds of themes to look out for and to become aware of in your everyday lives and in your everyday manifestations. When we're aware of these things, if something shows up, we can really recognise, gosh, if something isn't working, something's out of balance, now is the time to do something about it, and the lunar energy is supporting me in this process. Super Souls, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope it helps you with your manifesting, and tons and tons of love to you. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, subscribing, for being a part of this amazing community. My voice has just about held out till the end. Thank you so much to all of you who've been giving back through the super thanks, and thank you as well to those of you who are supporting my work ongoing on Patreon. Tons of love, and have an amazing month of manifestation.